Hello, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is the third and the last episode of my video series on American political system. In episode 1, I talked about the American Constitution and one of the three branches of American government, the presidency. In episode 2, I talked about the other two branches, the legislative and the judicial. I also talked about how the system of checks and balances works. For those of you who missed these two videos, I will leave the links down below. Please make sure you check them out. By the way, the content of this video series is largely based on two of my published books. One of them is Essentials of World History, and the other one is 222 Sociology Questions and Answers, both of which are available on Amazon. In today's episode, I will first talk about federalism, then the major political parties and interest groups, and finally, I will talk about presidential elections. Now, let's first talk about federalism, which is another major feature of the American politics. Federalism is a system in which powers of government are divided into two levels, federal and state. As we already know, the federal government is divided into three branches. It is the same with all the 50 states in America. Each state has an executive, a legislature, and a judiciary. The state government works basically the same way as the federal government. The American people are governed by these two layers of government. For example, people who live in the state of New York must obey laws made by the New York legislature and the Congress in Washington, D.C. According to the Constitution, those powers which are not specifically designated to the federal government are reserved for states. As a result, laws are made both by the federal government and state governments. Of course, federal laws can override state laws. The federal government decides on the issues which concern the whole country, such as foreign policies, military forces. For example, only the federal government has the power to make treaties with foreign countries, and only Congress can declare wars. The president is the commander-in-chief of all armed forces. Each state, on the other hand, is responsible for issues such as education, policing, ownership of property, etc. When it comes to policing power, the power mainly rests with the state and the local governments. So, don't assume that the FBI, which stands for Federal Bureau of Investigation, is on a higher rank than the state. The state police is not subordinate to the FBI. The FBI only comes into play when there are federal crimes such as cyber crimes, public corruption, national security issues, etc. Unlike America, Britain is governed by a unitary system with the central powers in the hands of the Parliament in London. Great Britain is made up of 4 countries: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Among them, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland have some degree of autonomous power, but such power is delegated by the Parliament, which may enact laws unilaterally altering or abolishing those powers. Like America, Australia is also a federal country. It is made up of 6 states and 2 territories. Federalism in Australia works basically the same way as America. Now, let's talk about the major political parties in America. The political party system is not even mentioned in the American Constitution. It came into existence almost immediately after the nation was founded. At the very beginning, there were two political sides over the issue of whether there should be a strong national government. One side was the so-called Federalists, who supported the Constitution and wanted a stronger national government. The other side, who were called Anti-Federalists, were opposed to the Constitution and wanted more power to remain with the states. Very soon, the Anti-Federalists became known as the Democratic Republicans, which were often simply called Republicans. Later on, the Federalists as a political party collapsed. And in 1824, during the presidential election, the Democratic Republicans were divided into two groups. One was called the Democratic Party and the other the Republican Party, under the leadership of two presidential candidates. Over the course of more than 200 years, a two-party political system has become a major feature in the United States. While there are a number of small parties and some people call themselves independents, the majority of Americans see themselves as supporting either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Although there is a considerable diversity of views within each of the two major political parties, some general differences do exist. On the whole, the Democratic Party tends to be more socially and economically liberal. They are in favor of greater rather than lesser governmental intervention to deal with the social and economic problems. They tend to favor tax increases to support governmental action. Democrats are more likely to support affirmative action programs, a national health insurance program, and individual choice in abortion decisions, and to oppose the death penalty. In terms of membership, Democrats are frequently drawn from the middle and working classes. Republicans, on the other hand, tend to be more conservative. Republicans prefer the government to be less involved in economic activity. They want to give more powers to the market forces because they believe that market can better regulate economic activity. They tend to oppose the Democratic positions on the social issues such as abortion, homosexuality, and death penalty. In terms of membership, the Republicans are more likely to come from the upper and upper middle classes. Each of the two parties is represented by an animal. The Republican Party is represented by the elephant. The elephant as a symbol became popular by a cartoonist in the late 1800s, and later on the Republicans embraced it as their official symbol and used it in their campaigns. On the other hand, the Democratic Party is represented by the donkey. The history of this symbol is that when Democrat Andrew Jackson was running for president in 1828, his opponents called him a donkey, and Jackson liked it and decided to use it on his campaign posters. From then on, the donkey has been associated with the Democratic Party. The British political system is also a two-party system, with the Conservative Party and the Labour Party dominating the British political landscape. In Australia, the political system is dominated by two major groups, the Australian Labor Party and the coalition parties, which consist of the Liberal Party and the Nationalist Party. Now, let's have a look at interest groups in America. In addition to political parties, political organizations in the United States also include numerous special interest groups. An interest group is an organization that tries to influence the political process on behalf of some special interests. They are also known as pressure groups because of their attempt to press government policies. There is a variety of interest groups in America. Labor unions, professional associations, business groups, and religious organizations become interest groups when they attempt to influence legislation on their own behalf. Occasionally, like-minded individuals unite to promote their political and social interests, such as the modern Tea Party movement that was formed in 2009 to protest against President Obama's tax policy. By the way, the modern Tea Party stands for Tax Enough Already. In America, the major tactic of interest groups is lobbying, which is a tactic of trying to influence decisions made by government officials. The word lobbying is used because the job of representatives of interest groups is to wait on the lobby of Congress, waiting for legislators and trying to persuade them to promote the group's interest. Lobbyists have become a major force in American politics. The practice of lobbying is considered as essential to the proper functioning of government in America. Congresspeople who want to be re-elected must pay attention to them because they can spend huge sums of money to organize big numbers of voters on their side. Finally, let's have a brief look at major elections in America. According to the American Constitution, general elections are held every 4 years, in which a president is elected for a term of 4 years. The general elections also elect all the House of Representatives and 1/3 of the Senate, which has a total of 100 members representing the 50 states. Every 2 years, in between, the so-called midterm elections are held, in which the whole House of Representatives and another 1/3 of the Senate are elected. Since the Civil War in the early 1860s, the two major political parties, the Democratic and Republican parties, have dominated the U.S. political landscape. Both parties have been successful in getting their candidates elected at different times. Many factors influence the American voters, including political affiliation, economic situations, immigration and abortion, and many others. Even personal charisma plays a certain role. For example, it is widely believed that John F. Kennedy won the 1960 election because he was more personally attractive than his opponent, Richard Nixon. Based on my personal observations, American voters are also conscious of political balance, which is a major reason why different parties control the White House and Congress. For example, if a Democratic president sits in the White House, the Republicans usually control Congress, either of the two houses or both. Also, based on my personal observations, American voters in general are not interested in elections. Many sociologists have pointed out that the United States has one of the lowest percentages of voter turnout of all Western nations. There is no penalty for failing to vote in America. Besides, many voters in America lack an understanding of both public issues and the basic processes of government. Like in America, citizens in Britain are not required by law to vote. However, voting is compulsory in Australia, and there is a penalty of $20 to $50 for not voting in Australia. Well, that is all that I wanted to talk about in this video, which is the third and the last episode of my video series on the American political system. Thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.